case in the capital region grew to an interstate drug trafficking investigation. Look at all of this here. It led to the arrest of 13 people and hundreds of narcotics seized. CBS 6's Emma Quinn has the latest.
Imagine you're cruising down the highway at midnight, running parallel to a semi-truck from America's most reputable shipping brand. You figure it's hauling legit cargo? You might be wrong. A fateful traffic stop one night in April 2025 exposed the most chilling secret in FBI history. This multi-billion-dollar logistics giant was actually a puppet that the Sinaloa cartel had fully bought out long ago. How could a criminal organization take over the third-largest trucking company in the United States and run a shadow empire right under law enforcement's nose for 5 years without anyone noticing? Let's dig into the truth behind this crime of the century. We meet again in a story where the boundary between truth and the wildest hypotheses seems to blur. Let's turn back time to the 8th of April 2025. Imagine you're standing on Interstate 40, that deserted stretch of highway between Oklahoma City and Little Rock. It is 11:42 at night. The air feels thick with only the headlights of 18-wheeler tractor trailers ripping through the darkness. An Arkansas state trooper signals a large truck to pull over for a routine inspection. The truck bears the logo of Transnational Freight Services, the third largest trucking company in the United States. You all know this isn't some obscure no-name outfit. It's a giant that anyone who's ever driven on America's highways has spotted at least once. They haul everything from automotive parts to electronics for the biggest corporations on the planet. The driver steps down. He's extremely polite. His logbook is flawless, paperwork without a single wrinkle. Everything appears to be the most ordinary shipment in the world. But when the DOT inspectors run a handheld density scanner along the trailer walls, an anomalous signal pops up. The listed cargo of industrial machinery parts turned out to be 400 pounds lighter than what was stated on the steel bill of lading. The investigators decided to drill a small hole into the side of the trailer. Instead of hitting insulation, the drill bit struck a fake hydraulic wall. Inside that secret compartment, they discovered 340 kilograms of pure white powder wrapped in plastic with an estimated street value of $12 million. Can you believe it? 350 pounds of illicit substance in just one traffic stop. The driver, a 6-year veteran with a spotless record, didn't ask for a lawyer at all. Instead, he cooperated right away. And what he revealed in the interrogation room sent chills down the spines of the FBI agents. He wasn't a lone smuggler. He was an employee simply following orders, and those orders didn't come from any ordinary freight dispatcher. They came from a cartel. Transnational Freight Services wasn't just infiltrated, it had been outright bought out. The Sinaloa cartel is said to have taken over the third largest trucking company in the United States and turned it into the most sophisticated drug distribution network in history. To grasp the scale of this threat, we need to look back at the timeline. In 2022, Transnational Freight Services was sold by the founding family for $850 million. The buyer was a group of investors called American Logistics Partners, LLC. At the time, business media reported it as nothing more than a standard corporate acquisition. Operations continued as usual. 8,000 employees kept their jobs. But American Logistics Partners was actually a shell company. It was a front controlled directly by the criminal organization. The $850 million used to purchase the company wasn't venture capital. It was illegal money laundered clean through underground banks and cryptocurrency exchanges. In just 2 years, the organization didn't merely run a trucking company, they weaponized it. Their logistics system is truly shocking. Contraband crosses the Mexico border and gathers at Transnational's hub in El Paso. There, 32 operatives of the organization work under the guise of warehouse employees loading illicit cargo into specially designed trailers right alongside legitimate shipments. These trucks were then assigned to 89 specific drivers, individuals who had either been corrupted or deliberately recruited into the network. They drove standard routes to distribution hubs in Atlanta, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Dallas. To the police, the public, and even the other 7,000 innocent employees, everything still looked like routine business operations. But behind the corporate logo, they were moving massive quantities of deadly poison. According to reports, over 5 years, this network moved 180 tons of white powder, 45 tons of synthetic stimulants, and 8 tons of the deadly poison fentanyl across America's highways. They blended legitimate cargo with illicit goods worth billions of dollars, making detection almost impossible using conventional methods. The FBI realized that arresting a single driver wouldn't solve the problem. They were up against a $3 billion empire that owned trucks, warehouses, and even its own logistics management software. If they acted too soon, the organization would destroy records and vanish into thin air. They needed a plan to dismantle the entire corporate structure in one decisive blow. The operation was given the code name Rolling Thunder. Over 3 weeks, the FBI worked in absolute secrecy. They issued subpoenas for shipping records, tracing suspicious movement patterns, or deliveries made during odd hours. They covertly installed GPS tracking devices on the trucks of the 89 drivers under suspicion. The surveillance teams watched as transnational trucks pulled into warehouses where no legitimate cargo was ever unloaded, only mysterious duffel bags coming and going. By July 2025, the trap was set. The FBI had identified 23 warehouses across 14 states serving as distribution hubs. They had the names of the Memphis-based executives who were secretly on the cartel's payroll, but the logistical challenge was a nightmare. How do you simultaneously arrest 89 drivers who are constantly moving across the federal interstate system? How do you raid 23 facilities simultaneously without tipping off the others? At 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time on the 15th of July, the answer presented itself. Across 18 states, FBI SWAT teams, DEA agents, and state police units moved into position all at once. They tracked real-time GPS signals from every single target. Some drivers were asleep in their cabs at truck stops. Others were still driving on the highways. A few were actively loading or unloading cargo at that very moment. The order to execute the takedown of the largest corporate enterprise in United States history had been issued. The clock struck 5:30 in the morning. Across 18 states, the surveillance team shifted from observation mode to full assault. This challenge was unprecedented. The FBI wasn't raiding a single building, they were raiding a mobile target sprawled across 3 million square miles of highway. If one driver managed to grab the CB radio and broadcast a warning, the remaining 88 could dump their loads or abandon their trucks and vanish. The assault had to be instantaneous. In Texas, along Interstate 10, morning traffic was starting to build up. 3 transnational container trucks were traveling in convoy toward Houston. To the drivers, the sudden flash of lights in their rearview mirrors looked like just another routine traffic stop. But when they pulled over to the shoulder, what awaited them wasn't a lone state trooper, it was a full FBI tactical team rolling up to surround them. The agents surged forward, weapons drawn, yanking the drivers out of their cabs before they could even reach for their encrypted phones. When the K9 units gave the alert, the agents deployed handheld density scanners to pinpoint the hidden voids. They peeled back the interior sleeper compartment panels. Behind the fiberglass walls, they didn't find insulation, they found 600 kilograms of white powder stacked neatly like gold bricks. At the same time in Georgia, a quiet truck stop had turned into a battlefield. 4 transnational drivers were sitting inside the diner sipping coffee and coordinating their next loads. FBI teams swept the restaurant, apprehending them right in the middle of their conversation. Outside, their trucks were surrounded and seized millions of dollars worth of contraband, sitting parked right next to families on summer road trips. But the most intense action unfolded in Illinois. At a transnational warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago, officially listed as an auto parts distribution center, SWAT teams stormed the facility. This wasn't a storage site, it was a full-scale processing lab. As the agents burst in, they found 12 employees, cartel operatives, busily unpacking a fresh shipment. They were extracting 2 tons of synthetic stimulants from inside hollowed-out industrial machinery. The air inside the building was thick with the acrid stench of chemical dust. Can you believe a billion-dollar corporation was taken over by a cartel right under law enforcement's nose? Legitimate shipments sat abandoned in the corner of the room while the cartel's priority cargo took center stage. Meanwhile, the very heart of the operation was being ripped out in Memphis, Tennessee. Federal agents stormed the headquarters of Transnational Freight Services. The scene inside was utter chaos. Legitimate employees, accountants, dispatchers, HR staff stood frozen in shock as the agents marched straight into the executive offices. They arrested 12 senior managers. These were the individuals who had facilitated the takeover, cooked the books, and ensured that the corrupted drivers were assigned to the routes carrying the illicit loads. As the agents seized the servers and filing cabinets, they secured the real ledger's documents that recorded more than $2.4 billion in proceeds from illegal operations laundered through the company over 5 years. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the statistics were staggering. All 89 targeted drivers had been taken into custody. 23 warehouses had been secured. The seized evidence included 18 tons of white powder, 4 tons of synthetic stimulants, 680 kilograms of fentanyl, and $67 million in cash. The forensic analysis of the seized trucks revealed exactly why this network had survived undetected for 5 years. Those secret compartments were mechanical masterpieces. Some were built directly inside the fuel tanks using internal baffles to separate the diesel from the contraband. Others employed hydraulic pistons to lift the trailer floor, accessible only by a specific magnetic code lock. Routine roadside inspections never stood a chance of finding them. The criminal organization didn't just use trucks, they had completely re-engineered them. However, as the dust settled, the true scale of the collapse began to come into sharp focus. Transnational Freight Services wasn't a complete shell company, it was a genuine trucking giant hauling freight for companies on the Fortune 500 list. With its entire fleet grounded and accounts frozen, supply chains across the United States started to seize up. Assembly lines in Detroit ground to a halt because critical auto parts were sitting idle on a seized truck in Ohio. Grocery stores across the South began missing deliveries. The takedown was a monumental law enforcement victory, but it also triggered an economic earthquake. In Washington, the Attorney General prepared to tell the world that one of America's most trusted brands had actually been a mask for its most dangerous enemy. All 89 arrested drivers were charged with conspiracy to distribute controlled substances and money laundering. Given the enormous volume of contraband involved, they faced prison sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. For the 12 senior executives, the Department of Justice invoked the Kingpin Act, a statute typically reserved for major crime lords. If convicted, they would face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. That afternoon, a national security press conference was held at the Federal Coordination Center. Representatives from the FBI, DEA, SICE, and Child Protection Agencies reviewed the first consolidated report. It documented numerous previously classified cases of missing children labeled as unresolved relocations. Federal welfare payments had been routed to phantom caregivers' transportation routes disguised as humanitarian transfers. Every thread led back to the same source, the financial infrastructure of Hassan Nur-Warsameh. Pensions, health insurance, and livelihoods vanished into thin air for them simply because a criminal organization treated them as nothing more than camouflage. At this point, the story seems to conclude with justice prevailing. However, if we dig deeper into the details, there are still gaps that leave observers questioning everything. Some sources from inside the logistics community claim that the true scale of the operation may be far larger than what has been officially disclosed. Perhaps Transnational wasn't the only company taken over in this manner. It seems the press is now speculating that at least 2 other major trucking corporations are also in the FBI's crosshairs, showing similar patterns of ownership. According to some sources circulating on cybersecurity forums, the $850 million that was seized is actually just the tip of the iceberg in a far more intricate cross-border money laundering system. The online community finds it extremely hard to believe that a criminal organization could operate such a massive, legitimate business so smoothly for 5 years without ever being detected. From that skepticism, a hypothesis has emerged. Could there have been complicity from even more powerful figures within the financial oversight system? several questions are being raised. Why didn't the bank's monitoring algorithms trigger any red flags when such an enormous sum of money flowed into American logistics? Partners, LLC. The press is speculating that the downfall of Transnational may have been scripted by a rival faction in the underworld looking to eliminate a competitor. It appears that Operation Rolling Thunder, despite its spectacular success, still hasn't reached the true puppet masters pulling strings from Mexico. Many believe the arrested individuals were merely pawns sacrificed to secure safety for the real kingpins. There are even rumors that a portion of the seized contraband mysteriously disappeared before it could be incinerated. Operation Rolling Thunder represented an excruciating strategic dilemma pitting national security imperatives against socioeconomic stability. On the benefit side, it stands as a resounding triumph. Law enforcement successfully severed what may have been the single largest superhighway for deadly narcotics in American history, removing dozens of tons of poison from communities and dismantling the financial architecture of a sophisticated transnational criminal enterprise. The operation didn't merely interrupt trafficking, it exposed critical vulnerabilities in corporate law and governance, ultimately spurring stricter regulations and enhanced due diligence requirements designed to shield the legitimate economy from infiltration by illicit capital in the years ahead. However, the price paid was staggeringly high and left deep, lasting scars. The heaviest damage wasn't measured in frozen financial figures, but in the direct, devastating impact on the lives of more than 7,000 innocent employees. Honest mechanics, accountants, and drivers suddenly lost their livelihoods, pensions, and health insurance overnight, all erased because of the greed and betrayal at the top. Beyond that, the abrupt collapse of a trucking giant sent shockwaves rippling through supply chains, nationwide, halting production lines from Detroit all the way down to the industrial heart of the American South. It seems this war represents a brutal trade-off to shield communities from the devastation wrought by illicit narcotics. Society had to endure the agonizing collapse of a major economic entity. This serves as a stark reminder that when crime hides behind the facade of legitimate business, the fallout extends far beyond legal consequences. It becomes a profound humanitarian crisis. The battle against the transnational freight services network was never merely a triumph for law enforcement. It stands as a deafening alarm bell about the unpredictable, ever-evolving metamorphosis of modern organized crime. This case tore apart the illusion of security surrounding global supply chains, exposing just how perilously thin the boundary has become between legitimate commerce and outright criminal activity. Perhaps the most terrifying element isn't the colossal volume of contraband that was seized, but rather the chilling manner in which a criminal syndicate managed to parasitize and manipulate a multi-billion-dollar economic entity, transforming critical national infrastructure into a vehicle for illicit profit. Alongside the undeniable achievement of the FBI, we cannot overlook the exorbitant price that both the economy and society at large were forced to pay. The heartbreaking image of 7,000 innocent employees, ordinary people who relied on honest work, suddenly stripped of their livelihoods overnight, stands as painful proof that in this silent, bloodless war, it is frequently the hardworking, law-abiding citizens who end up as the unwilling collateral damage. It seems that while Operation Rolling Thunder successfully severed one gigantic tentacle, it also raises a deeply troubling hypothesis: just how many other Trojan horses are still quietly operating under the glossy veneer of major corporations. This confrontation reveals that when criminals operate with the mindset of CEOs and wield advanced management technology, the fight against them demands not only relentless force, but also absolute transparency in the global flow of finance to snuff out the seeds of such infiltration before they can take root. Of course, these are merely hypotheses that have yet to receive any official resolution, but they serve as a reminder that in the world of organized crime and global corporations, the truth is often far more multifaceted and complicated than what appears in newspaper headlines. What do you all think about this case? Is this a decisive, thorough victory for the rule of law, or merely the opening salvo in an even more brutal shadow war yet to come? The story of transnational freight services stands as a monument to ambition corrupted by greed. Those white trucks, once bearing the transnational logo, have now been repainted rolling along for other carriers with nothing but legitimate cargo in their trailers. Yet the ghost of what they once carried will haunt America's highways for a long time to come. The deepest lesson from this story is the need for constant vigilance against the temptations of material gain and blind trust in seemingly reputable facades. Those 89 drivers with spotless records traded their freedom for cartel money, convinced that the sheer scale of the corporation would shield them forever. But in reality, when the darkness was finally exposed, they were the very first ones left behind to face the consequences. It serves as a stark reminder to every one of us that no system is ever too big to fail when the law comes knocking. Holding fast to professional integrity and staying alert to any unusual red flags remains the only true shield that keeps you from becoming an unwitting pawn in someone else's dangerous game. The case of transnational freight services may have officially closed, but the haunting specter of those ghosts on the highway lingers long after the headlines fade. It's genuinely chilling to realize that the brands we trust the most can serve as the perfect cover for serious crime. In your opinion, how many other major corporations are still being quietly manipulated from the shadows without our knowledge, and is the financial system simply too loose and vulnerable right now? Please share your own thoughts and theories in the comments below. I'm genuinely eager to hear what everyone thinks. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next mysterious case file.